On the crisp morning of May 19, 1536, a queen knelt on a scaffold within the Tower of London. This wasn't a public spectacle. It was a private, chilling affair. The woman was Anne Boleyn, the second wife of King Henry VIII. Instead of a common axe, a skilled swordsman was brought from France for a cleaner, quicker end. In her final moments, she spoke with dignity, praying for the king she had once captivated. With one swift stroke, her life was over, leaving behind a story so dramatic it feels like fiction. But how did it come to this? How did a queen who reshaped a nation find herself condemned by her own husband? To understand her tragic end, we must go back to the beginning. Anne wasn't born into royalty. She was the daughter of a courtier, Sir Thomas Boleyn, but her family had ambition. As a young girl, she was sent to the continent, a rare and prestigious opportunity. She spent her formative years in the sophisticated courts of the Netherlands and France. There, she wasn't just learning to be a lady. She was absorbing culture, politics, and a certain French flair and wit that would later set her apart. She became fluent in French, skilled in music and dance, and developed a keen intellect and a strong, independent spirit. This European education polished her into a captivating figure, unlike any other at the English court. When Anne returned to England around 1522, she was a breath of fresh air. At a court where ladies were expected to be demure and submissive, Anne was witty, intelligent, and bold. She caught the eye of many, including King Henry VIII. At first, he likely saw her as just another potential mistress, but Anne was different. Having seen how her sister Mary was cast aside after being the king's lover and refused to follow the same path, she played a masterful game, denying the king's advances and refusing to become his mistress. This refusal didn't deter Henry. It utterly captivated him. He had never been denied anything before. Her intelligence and fiery spirit were a challenge, and Henry became obsessed. He wrote her passionate love letters, vowing to make her his queen, no matter the cost. This no matter the cost promise led to what became known as the King's Great Matter. Henry was desperate for a male heir, which his first wife, Catherine of Aragon, had failed to provide. He was also convinced his marriage to Catherine, his brother's widow, was cursed in the eyes of God. He sought an annulment from the Pope in Rome. For years, the king's top advisors, including the powerful Cardinal Wolsey, worked tirelessly to persuade the Pope. But Catherine of Aragon was the aunt of the most powerful ruler in Europe, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. The Pope was essentially the emperor's prisoner and couldn't grant the annulment without angering him. The negotiations dragged on for years, with Anne waiting in the wings, her future and the future of England hanging in the balance. As the Pope continued to stall, Henry's patience ran out. Frustrated with Rome's authority over his kingdom and his personal life, he began to listen to radical new ideas. Influenced by Anne, who was a supporter of religious reform, and advisors like Thomas Cromwell, Henry decided on a revolutionary course of action. If the Pope wouldn't grant him what he wanted, he would simply remove the Pope's power from England altogether. He convened what became known as the Reformation Parliament. Over several years, a series of laws were passed that systematically dismantled the Catholic Church's power in England. The climax was the Act of Supremacy in 1534, which declared Henry the supreme head of the Church of England. This dramatic break from Rome, born from a king's desire for a new wife and a male heir, changed the course of English history forever. With the Pope out of the picture, things moved quickly. Henry's marriage to Catherine was declared void, and he secretly married a pregnant Anne Boleyn on June 1, 1533, and achieved her ultimate goal. She was crowned Queen of England in a lavish ceremony at Westminster Abbey. The public's reaction was lukewarm. Many still saw Catherine as the rightful queen, but Anne was now on the throne, and the kingdom held its breath, awaiting the birth of the promised male heir. In September, she gave birth, but it was not the son Henry so desperately craved. It was a daughter, a healthy, red-haired baby girl named Elizabeth. While a disappointment to Henry, this child's birth was a momentous event, for she would one day rule England and become one of its greatest monarchs. For a time, Anne held her precarious position as queen, but her failure to produce a son began to erode her standing. She suffered at least 2 devastating miscarriages after Elizabeth's birth. The final one, of a male child, was the turning point. Henry, deeply superstitious, began to believe that his marriage to Anne was also cursed. His infatuation had turned to frustration and then to cold indifference. He had already cast his eye on a new lady-in-waiting, the gentle and quiet Jane Seymour, who was the complete opposite of the fiery Anne. Anne's enemies at court, who had always resented her, saw their chance. They began to whisper poisons in the king's ear, planting the seeds of her destruction. Suddenly, the queen's world came crashing down. In April 1536, a whirlwind of accusations emerged. Anne was arrested on shocking charges of adultery with multiple men, including her own brother, George Boleyn. The charges also included incest and plotting to kill the king. Historians widely agree that these accusations were almost certainly fabricated, a convenient way for Henry to get rid of a wife he no longer wanted. A series of swift show trials were held. The evidence was flimsy, based on hearsay and confessions likely extracted under torture. Despite her intelligent and spirited defense, the outcome was predetermined. Anne and the accused men were found guilty and sentenced to death. Her marriage to Henry was annulled, and her daughter, Elizabeth, was declared illegitimate. In just 3 short years, Anne Boleyn had gone from the king's obsession to a condemned traitor on the scaffold. But her story doesn't end there. Her ultimate legacy was the daughter she left behind. That little girl, declared illegitimate and cast aside, would one day inherit the throne. As Queen Elizabeth I, she would rule for over 40 years, ushering in a golden age of culture, exploration, and national pride. She embodied her mother's intelligence, courage, and spirit. Through Elizabeth, Anne Boleyn's influence shaped England in ways she could never have imagined. The queen who lost her head ultimately gave England one of its greatest rulers, securing her own complicated and fascinating place in history. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most dramatic moments. See you next time.